Hey guys, tonight we dive deep into an experience that still sends chills down my spine. The kind of moment that makes you wonder if you're really alone. Picture this. You're in your room, the lights dim, and suddenly you get that gut feeling. You know the one. The feeling like someone is standing behind you, watching you. But when you turn around, nothing. It's not just in your head, though. There's something more to it. I probably won't sleep after this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is, where you're always curious to know where my listeners are. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The house felt quiet. Too quiet. But I could feel it, someone was there. I didn't know how, but I just knew. It wasn't the usual creaks of an old building settling or the wind tapping against the windows. This felt different. The air was still, yet charged with something wrong. I've always had a soft spot for old houses. The kind with wooden floors that creak under your feet, and those old heavy doors that don't quite close properly. It was one of those houses, tucked in the corner of a sleepy neighborhood where the trees seemed to whisper secrets at night. My family had just moved in. And despite the antique charm, I found myself constantly turning to glance behind me. The house was empty. My family had long since gone to bed. But something kept my senses on edge. I was in my room when I felt it, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. It was as if someone was standing just behind me, breathing down my neck. I turned around quickly, but the room was empty. I was alone. Or so I thought. I laughed it off, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But that feeling, it wouldn't leave. It was like there was a presence, lingering, just out of sight, watching my every move. I stepped out of my room, the floorboards creaking under my weight as I made my way down the hallway. The house was dark, save for the faint moonlight streaming through the windows, casting long shadows on the walls. I passed the kitchen, the room where we had placed the old portrait of my great-grandfather, a man I never met. As I walked past, something caught my eye. The painting, it shifted, just slightly, as if someone had brushed past it. I stopped, staring at the image, my heart thudding in my chest. But the room was still. I took a deep breath and shook it off, convincing myself it was just the wind. But it wasn't. I continued down the hallway, my feet dragging along the hardwood. As I passed by the stairwell, I felt it again, a presence. But this time, it wasn't just a feeling. It was a pressure, a force pushing against me from behind. I turned my head, but once again, there was nothing there. And that's when I heard it, a faint whisper. Soft, barely audible. But it was there. It came from behind me, just over my shoulder, like someone was standing in the shadows, murmuring something I couldn't quite understand. I froze. Every muscle in my body stiffened. My heart raced, thumping in my chest. My breathing became shallow, and I fought the urge to run. I slowly turned around, half expecting to see a ghostly figure standing in the hallway. But it was just empty space. But the whisper, it lingered. It was as if the air itself had been tainted by something else. I stood there, in the darkness, completely still, straining my ears for any other sound, but nothing came. I waited. Then, just as I was about to turn and head back to my room, it came again, louder this time, clearer. A voice soft, gentle, yet full of an eerie calm whispered, "I'm here." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly spun on my heels and sprinted back to my room. The door slammed behind me, and I locked it, not daring to look back. I didn't sleep that night. How could I, knowing something or someone was lurking just out of sight, hidden in the shadows? The feeling of being watched stayed with me, lingering in every corner of that house. Some would say I was just tired, that my mind was playing tricks on me. Others would brush it off as coincidence. But for me, that night marked the beginning of something that I couldn't explain. The whispers, the presence. It was all too real to ignore. The next few nights were no better. I had hoped the feeling would fade, that I would just get used to the house. But the more I stayed there, the more the sensation grew. It was as though the house itself was alive, breathing, and shifting around me. Sometimes, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, hearing faint footsteps in the hallway. But when I peeked out from under my covers, nothing was there. It became a nightly ritual. The whispers, the strange sounds. It was almost as if something or someone was trying to make itself known. But it wasn't like any ghost story I'd ever heard. There were no creaky old chains dragging across the floor or eerie howls from beyond the grave. No, this was different, more subtle, more personal. One night, after several days of sleepless torment, I decided to confront it. I stood in the hallway, determined to get to the bottom of this, even if it meant facing whatever was haunting me. I called out, my voice trembling, "Who's there?" There was a long pause, and for a moment, everything felt still. Then, the whisper returned, louder now, clearer. It was as if the house itself was breathing with me. And this time, I swear I heard a name, just faint enough that I could barely make it out. Elena. I froze again, a cold chill running through my body. Eleanor? That name meant nothing to me. At least, not consciously. But something deep inside me stirred. It was like I'd heard it before, long ago, in some distant memory. Or perhaps it was a name tied to the house itself. My great-grandfather's portrait flashed in my mind again, his stern face, watching from the kitchen. Maybe there was something unto the legends of this old house after all. Something or someone that had been waiting, watching, for me to finally listen. And that's when I realized something else. The house wasn't just haunted by a presence. It was haunted by a story I wasn't yet ready to uncover. The feeling didn't leave me that night. No, it clung to me, heavy and suffocating, like a blanket made of dread. I tried to sleep, but the more I closed my eyes, the louder the whispers became. It was as though they were circling around my head, growing louder with every passing minute. I pulled the covers over my head, as if that would shield me from whatever lingered in the dark. But sleep never came. It was then I realized something, a truth, that made my blood run cold. The whispers weren't random. They weren't just figments of my imagination. They were deliberate, as if someone, something, was trying to make a connection. And it wasn't just me they were speaking to. It was the house itself, too. The walls, the floorboards, even the furniture. They all seemed to listen, responding with the groaning of wood, the creaking of old joints. The whole house, it seemed, was alive, breathing, whispering, waiting. But why, the next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The house felt heavier, more oppressive, as though the air itself had thickened. Every corner I turned, every room I entered, there it was again, the sensation of being watched. I couldn't escape it. I couldn't run from it. It was as though the house itself was closing in on me. And no matter how many doors I shut or windows I opened, the air just kept getting thicker. I was losing my mind. It was at that moment that I decided I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to get to the bottom of whatever this was. Maybe it was just a trick of the mind. Some leftover anxiety from moving into a new home. Or maybe, just maybe, there was something more, something hidden, deep within the walls of this old house. Something old, something forgotten. I found myself standing in front of the family portrait, the one of my great-grandfather. I stared at his stoic face, feeling a strange sense of familiarity, like I knew him, even though I'd never met him. There was a warmth in his eyes, a hint of something comforting, yet unnerving, as if he was watching over me, even now, even in this strange new place. But that's when I noticed it, the slight tilt of the frame, the way it seemed to hang ever so crookedly, just enough to catch the light and cast a shadow across his face. My heart skipped a beat. I stepped forward, reaching out to adjust the frame. But as my fingers brushed against the cold wood, I heard it a soft creak from the other side of the room. I froze. It was the sound of footsteps. Soft, deliberate, almost hesitant. And they were getting closer. I turned slowly. My breath caught in my throat. The room was still, the silence almost unbearable. But the footsteps, they were real. I could hear them, even though I saw no one. The sound came from behind me, just a few steps away. And yet when I looked, no one was there. The air was thick with something I couldn't quite name. But it wasn't just fear. It was a sense of familiarity. Like I'd heard those footsteps before, somewhere, deep in my past. I turned back to the portrait, my pulse quickening. The painting of my great-grandfather was still hanging crookedly. But now, there was something different about it. A faint, almost imperceptible movement. I blinked, and then it was gone. I had to know what was going on. There was something in that painting, something connected to this house, something I hadn't yet understood. I ran my hand over the frame, feeling the grooves in the wood. I pressed harder, and then it happened, a soft click. The wall behind the portrait shifted, revealing a small hidden door. My heart raced. Was this a secret compartment, or something more sinister I didn't know? But the urge to open it was overwhelming. I reached out, hands trembling as I slowly turned the handle. The door creaked open, revealing a darkened, just narrow hallway, that seemed to lead into the bowels of the house itself. The air grew colder as I stepped into the hallway, my breath visible in the dim light. It felt like I was stepping into another world, a world that existed parallel to the one I had known, hidden beneath the surface, just waiting to be discovered. I had no idea what I would find, but I couldn't stop myself from moving forward. The hallway stretched on, the walls lined with shelves filled with old books and trinkets, each one covered in dust, untouched by time. There were relics of the past: an old lantern, rusted keys, faded photographs. Everything about the room was forgotten, as if it had been sealed away for years. Locked behind the door I had just opened, I reached the end of the hallway, where a small wooden door stood. It looked ancient, worn by time, but still strong. The feeling of being watched intensified. It was almost as if the very air around me was alive, pressing in, urging me to open it. I hesitated, my fingers brushing against the cold wood. It was the same sensation as before, the one I couldn't shake, the one that told me something was wrong, but I couldn't turn back, not now, not when I was so close to the answer. With a deep breath, I twisted the knob and pushed the door open. The darkness beyond was impenetrable, but I could hear something faint, a whisper, soft and distant. But it sounded like words. Words I could almost understand. But before I could step inside, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun around, heart hammering in my chest. But again, there was nothing. No one. Just the empty, suffocating silence of the house. The door creaked open further on its own, inviting me in. The whispers grew louder, and for the first time, I felt it, the undeniable truth. Whatever was here, whatever haunted this house, it was waiting for me to discover it. And now, it was finally ready to reveal itself. The door creaked open wider, the darkness beyond, almost beckoning, pulling me closer. I stood frozen, my hand still on the knob, unable to move forward. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat seeming louder than the last. It was as if the very air in the hallway had thickened, as though something unseen was pressing down on me, urging me to step into the unknown. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone standing behind me. But the hallway was empty, bathed in the faint moonlight filtering through the windows. Yet, despite the emptiness, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I forced myself to take a step forward. The darkness ahead was almost suffocating, and yet there was something magnetic about it. Something compelling me to move deeper into it. I reached out, my hand trembling as I held onto the doorframe for support, and stepped across the threshold. The moment I entered, I felt a sudden drop in temperature, the air growing frigid around me. The whispering returned, louder now, filling the space around me like a tangible presence. It was a sound that seemed to echo through the very walls. A low murmur that seemed to grow louder with each step I took into the room. My breath fogged in the cold air as I moved deeper, my eyes adjusting to the dim light. The room was small, but it felt ancient. Dust-covered shelves lined the walls, filled with forgotten relics. A faded tapestry hung crookedly on the far wall, depicting a scene of some long-forgotten ritual. At the center of the room, A large, ornate chest sat in the middle, its wood darkened with age. As I approached the chest, the whispering grew louder, now almost frantic. It felt like it was coming from inside the chest itself, the voice urging me to open it. But part of me resisted. I wanted to run, to leave this room and never look back. But the curiosity gnawed at me, pushing me forward. I knelt down in front of the chest, my hands shaking as I ran my fingers over the intricate carvings etched into the wood. The designs seemed familiar, as though I had seen them before, though I couldn't quite place where. My heart thudded in my chest, each beat like a warning. I opened the chest slowly, the old hinges groaning in protest. Inside, there was nothing but darkness at first, nothing but the overwhelming sense of emptiness. But as my eyes adjusted, I saw something gleaming faintly in the dark. A book. I reached inside, my fingers brushing against its worn cover. It was heavy, its leather bindings cracked with age. As I held it in my hands, a cold chill washed over me, and the whispering grew louder, more urgent. I opened the book, my fingers trembling as I turned the first page. The writing was old, the ink faded, but I could make out the words, if only just Elena, I whispered, the name that had haunted me, now staring back at me from the pages. The words on the page were cryptic, speaking of rituals and sacrifices, of spirits bound to the house, of a family legacy that had been hidden away. The more I read, the more I felt like I was uncovering a truth that had been buried for generations, a truth that I wasn't meant to discover. But it wasn't just the book that caught my attention. It was the sensation, the unmistakable feeling of eyes on me. The temperature had dropped even further, and the shadows around me seemed to grow darker, thicker, as if something was lurking just beyond the edge of my vision. I looked up from the book, my heart racing. The room was still, too still, but the presence was undeniable. I wasn't alone. I slowly closed the book, my hands trembling as I set it down on the chest. The whispering had stopped, replaced by a heavy silence that felt suffocating. I turned to leave, but before I could take a step, I heard it soft at first, almost inaudible. Footsteps. They were faint, barely perceptible, but they were there. Slowly, deliberately, coming closer. My breath caught in my throat as I looked around, searching for the source. But the room remained empty. There was no one there. Yet the footsteps continued, growing louder with each passing second. I spun around, desperate to find the source, but all I saw was darkness. The shadows seemed to stretch toward me, as if they were alive, reaching for me, pulling me back into the depths of the room. The whispers returned, louder now, the words unintelligible but full of urgency. Like a warning, I backed toward the door, my pulse quickening. The footsteps were right behind me now, and I could feel them. The pressure of someone or something just a breath away. I turned, my heart racing, and bolted out of the room, slamming the door shut behind me. I didn't stop running until I reached the safety of my room. The door locked tightly behind me. I collapsed onto the bed, gasping for breath, my body covered in a cold sweat. The house was silent again, but I knew better than to think it was over. I had uncovered something something that had been buried for years, and now it was awake. I had opened a door, literally and figuratively, and whatever was on the other side, whatever was waiting for me, was no longer content to remain hidden. The house was alive, and it wasn't just the walls that were watching me. Somewhere, deep within its foundations, something was stirring, something that had been waiting for me to uncover its secrets. And now that I had, there would be no turning back. I tried to sleep that night, but every time I closed my eyes, the memories of what I had found flooded my mind. The book, the whispers, the footsteps. I could still hear them, even now, as if they were echoing in my mind, chasing me, drawing me deeper into the house. The weight of it all pressed down on me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Even in my own room, the shadows outside my window seemed to move, shifting with the wind. Or perhaps something more. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Something had changed in that room. The house felt different, more oppressive, more alive. It wasn't just the house I needed to worry about. It was the things in it, things that had been hidden for so long. And now, they were awake. I spent the next few days trying to get some answers. I returned to the room, the one with the hidden chest. But when I opened the door, it was empty. The book was gone. The chest, once so intricately carved, was now just a plain, weathered box. It was as though everything had returned to normal, if you could even call it that. The room was cold, silent, and empty. But I knew better. It had been too real. What I had felt, what I had seen, wasn't just some figment of my imagination. I dug through the house, searching for any other clues, any other signs that might explain what was happening. And then, I found it, a letter, tucked away in the back of an old drawer in the attic, hidden beneath a pile of dusty papers. It was old, yellowed with age, and the ink had faded. But the words were still legible enough for me to read. Elena. It began. She is the one who will lead them. The spirits are restless. They want to be free. The house, it has a bond to the land. The ritual must be completed. It must be done before the sun rises, or all will be lost. The letter was signed by someone named Abigail, though I couldn't make out the last name. I didn't need to. The message was clear. Eleanor. It was her. She was the one I had been hearing about. She was the one who had been calling to me from the shadows, from the book, from the walls. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been drawn here for a reason. The house, the whispers, the footsteps. It was all part of a bigger picture, a story that had been waiting to be told. But what was I supposed to do with this knowledge? How was I supposed to stop it? I took the letter down to the living room, where I sat and stared at it for hours, unable to look away. The house was silent, but the air felt thick, as though something was just waiting to happen. I finally made up my mind. I had to go back to that room. I had to uncover the rest of the story, even if it meant facing whatever was lurking in the dark corners of the house. The next night, I returned to the hidden room, the one that still haunted my thoughts. I entered cautiously, the door creaking open behind me. The shadows stretched long, but there was no turning back now. I had to know. The chest was there again, just as it had been before. But this time, it wasn't closed. It was open, and the book was inside, resting on top of a dark cloth. The same book. It was waiting for me. I reached out, my hands shaking, and opened the book once more. The pages seemed to flip open of their own accord, stopping on a page marked with strange symbols. Some of them looked like ancient runes, while others seemed to be something else entirely, something far older, something that shouldn't be in this house. The whispering returned, faint at first, like a distant murmur from the other side of the room. But as I read the words on the page, they grew louder. The whispers became voices, calling to me, urging me to listen, to understand. And then I heard it. A name. My name. "You must finish what was started," the voices whispered, their tone soft but urgent. "Elena is waiting. She cannot be freed without you." I couldn't breathe. My head was spinning. The house, the spirits, Elena. It was all connected. They needed me. The ritual needed me. The house was pulling me in, dragging me deeper, until there would be no escaping. The book began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter and brighter, until the light was blinding. And then, the ground beneath me shook. The walls groaned, as though they were alive, and the temperature dropped again. So cold, I could see my breath in the air. I couldn't move. I was frozen in place, the light from the book casting strange shadows on the walls. And then, I heard the footsteps again, closer this time. They were coming. They were here. I turned around, and there she was. Elena? Her figure was tall and pale, her face obscured by long, flowing hair. She stepped forward, her presence filling the room, and the air seemed to grow even colder. Her eyes were dark, hollow, but they seemed to pierce through me, as if she could see into my very soul. "You have come," she whispered, her voice like a breeze from beyond the grave. "You must finish the ritual. The house cannot be freed without you." I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. I was paralyzed, caught in her gaze, unable to escape. Elena stepped closer, her cold hand reaching out to me. The room grew darker, the shadows pressing in, and I felt the weight of the house closing in on me, trapping me. "Finish it," she whispered again, her voice softer now, "or we will all be trapped forever." I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to break the bond that held the house, the spirits, and Eleanor captive. But in that moment, I realized something I had missed before. This wasn't just a house. This was a prison, and I had just unlocked the door. I stood there, frozen, my mind reeling as Eleanor's cold, spectral hand reached for me. The room around us seemed to close in, the walls pressing tighter, suffocating with the weight of unseen forces. The whispers, the faint murmur of voices long forgotten, grew louder until they were all I could hear, all I could feel. The house was alive with them, with her. I had always thought of this house as just an old building, a place to live, to make memories. But now, I saw it for what it truly was, something far darker, something far older. This wasn't just a home. This was a tomb, a prison, a place where spirits, bound by ancient rites, had been trapped for centuries. And now, somehow, I had become part of it. Eleanor's face was still hidden by her long, flowing hair, but I could feel her gaze on me, sharp and knowing. Her presence was overwhelming, like the air itself had thickened around her, become heavier, charged with the power of something ancient and powerful. "You must finish what was started," she repeated, her voice a soft whisper that echoed in my head. "The ritual must be completed. You are the key." I could feel her words settling into my bones, sinking deep into the marrow, and I knew, without a doubt, that she was telling the truth. The house, the spirits, the ritual, it all led back to me, somehow. I had been chosen, whether by fate or by some twisted design that I couldn't understand. I took a step back, away from her. But she followed, her footsteps silent, her form gliding through the air like a shadow. The cold around me grew even more intense, the temperature dropping to a point where I could no longer see my breath. "I don't understand," I managed to croak. My voice, weak in the face of the overwhelming presence in the room. "What do you want from me?" Her form seemed to shift then, her body almost dissipating into the shadows before reappearing just inches from me. The whispers grew louder, more frantic. I could hear them now, each voice distinct, like a chorus of voices from the past, speaking in languages I couldn't understand. "You have the power to break the bond." Eleanor's voice was steady, but there was an urgency there now, as if time was running out. "The ritual must be completed. The spirits cannot be freed until it is done. You must choose. Choose what I asked." Desperation creeping into my voice. My mind was racing, my thoughts fragmented, like shards of glass scattered across the floor. I had to understand. I had to know what I was being asked to do. She reached out again, this time her cold fingers brushing against my arm. The touch was like ice, sending a shock through my body, numbing me from the inside out. "The choice is yours. You can complete the ritual and release us from our prison, or you can leave. But if you leave, we will remain here forever. The house will never be free." Her words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. I could feel the weight of her decision pressing down on me, the enormity of what she was asking. For a moment, I thought about leaving, about running as far away from this place as I could. But the truth was, I didn't know where I could go. The house, the spirits, it was all tangled up in me now. I couldn't escape it. No matter where I went, I would always be connected to this place. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, and turned back to the chest. The book was still there, still glowing faintly in the dim light. The words on the pages were waiting for me. The ritual, the instructions, it was all there. I had to make a choice. The ritual, I could feel it now, deep within me, as if the house itself was whispering the words, guiding me toward the only solution. But something inside me recoiled at the thought. What would it cost? What was I about to unleash? Eleanor watched me silently, her form growing fainter, but her presence still palpable, like a shadow that refused to fade. The whispers continued, echoing in my ears, urging me forward. I reached for the book. The moment my fingers touched the pages, The ground beneath me shook. The walls groaned. The entire house trembling as though it was coming to life. Stretching, expanding, reaching for something just beyond its grasp. The light from the book blazed brighter, filling the room, blinding me for a moment. Then everything went silent. The air was thick with tension. The kind of silence that seems to stretch on forever, pregnant with the weight of impending change. I closed my eyes, holding the book tightly in my hands, and I began to recite the words, the ritual, as they appeared before me, their meaning becoming clearer with each syllable. The house responded. It was as if the very walls were alive, vibrating with energy, pulsing with a power I couldn't comprehend. The shadows in the room seemed to writhe, swirling like smoke, and the cold, the unbearable cold, grew even more intense. I felt a pressure on my chest, as though something was pushing me down, forcing me to kneel, to submit to whatever was happening. But I couldn't stop. The words came faster now, spilling from my lips as though they were no longer my own. The house, the spirits, they were all around me, surrounding me, feeding off the power that was being unleashed. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. The room was still, the house quiet once more. I opened my eyes, gasping for breath, as if I had been holding it for years. The light from the book had faded, and the whispers had stopped. The air had returned to its normal temperature, though it still felt heavy, thick with the remnants of the ritual. I looked up at Elena. She was still there, her figure standing just outside the glow of the book's light, her eyes dark and hollow, met mine, and for the first time, I saw something different, something almost thankful. "You have freed us," she said softly, her voice barely more than a whisper now. "You have completed the ritual." I stood there, panting, feeling the weight of the words settle over me. I had done it. I had completed it. But what now? What had I released? And what did it mean for me? For the house? Eleanor's figure began to fade, her form dissolving into the air, leaving only the faintest trace of her presence behind. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice fading with her. And then she was gone. The house was silent once more, the tension in the air lifting. But as I stood there, alone in the room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed forever. The house was free, yes. But what had I truly set loose? I didn't know. But I wasn't about to stay and find out. I turned and walked out of the room, the door creaking shut behind me. The house was silent. The whispers were gone. But I knew, deep down, that this house would never be the same, and neither would I. The days that followed were strange. The house felt different, but in a way I couldn't quite explain. The weight that had been pressing down on me, the sense of dread that had followed me every moment of the day, was gone. The air seemed lighter now, the shadows less oppressive. For the first time since moving in, I could breathe freely, without the constant feeling that something was lurking just beyond the edge of my vision. But while the house felt peaceful, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still connected to it, It was as if the walls had somehow absorbed everything that had happened, holding on to the memories of what had been released. I would pass by certain rooms, certain corners, and feel the slightest pull, a soft tug on my consciousness, a whisper of a memory that I couldn't quite place. The lingering sense of the unknown still curled around me like a second skin, always just out of sight, always waiting for me to understand. I spent the next few days wandering the house, trying to put everything behind me. I cleaned. I reorganized. I even ventured into the attic to sort through the boxes of forgotten family relics. There was a part of me that wanted to forget everything that had happened, Elena. The ritual, the book, but another part of me couldn't. I had crossed a line that I couldn't uncross. The house had shared its secrets with me. And now, no matter how much I wanted to forget, I would always be a part of it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the house grew dim with the coming of night, I sat on the porch, staring out into the yard. It had been a peaceful day, but there was still something lingering. I couldn't escape the sense that I was waiting for something. But what the ritual was complete, the spirits had been freed. I should have felt relieved. But instead, there was an unsettled feeling in the pit of my stomach. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves in the trees, and for a moment, the world felt still. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes for a brief moment. But when I opened them again, that's when I heard it. A soft, almost inaudible sound. A whisper, carried on the wind, so faint I wasn't sure if I had imagined it. I stood up, straining to listen. The sound was coming from inside the house. A familiar sound. The same soft whispers that had haunted me before. I hesitated. Could it be? Could it really be? I walked inside. My footsteps muffled on the wooden floors. The house was quiet, but the whispering was there again, just below the surface, as if the walls themselves were calling out to me. I followed the sound, moving cautiously through the house until I reached the living room, and there, sitting in the center of the room, was the book. It was open, its pages flipping as if blown by an unseen breeze. The faint glow of its pages casting strange shadows on the walls. The whispers seemed to come from the book itself, like voices trapped within the pages, crying out to be heard. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. This wasn't possible. I had completed the ritual. The spirits were free. Why was it here? Why was it calling me? I reached out, my fingers brushing against the book. And the moment I touched it, the whispers stopped. The air grew still, but the silence felt heavy, like something was waiting, watching. I slowly opened the book, my eyes scanning the pages. This time, the words were different. They weren't the same cryptic symbols that had appeared before. These were words I could understand. You have freed us. I read aloud, my voice shaking. But there is still one thing left undone. The room seemed to shift around me, the walls closing in as the temperature dropped once again. I could hear it now, footsteps, soft and measured, moving across the room behind me. I turned quickly, but there was no one there. Only the shadows, stretching long and dark across the floor. I backed away from the book, my mind racing. What did this mean? What had I missed? The footsteps grew louder, closer, until I could feel the pressure of someone standing just behind me. I spun around, but still, no one was there. But there was something else now, a figure, standing in the doorway. I could barely make out the shape, but I knew who it was. It was Elena. Her form was faint, barely visible, but I could feel her presence. Her gaze locked onto me, urging me forward. "You have done well." Her voice came, soft and distant, but full of a strange resonance. "But there is one final step." I took a step back, my mind racing. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I've done everything. I've completed the ritual. You're free." But Eleanor's form didn't move. She remained standing in the doorway, her face obscured by her hair. But her eyes, those dark, hollow eyes, seemed to pierce through me. "It's not over," she whispered, her voice growing fainter. "It never will be." And with that, she vanished. The shadows swallowed her whole, leaving nothing behind but an oppressive silence that seemed to hang in the air, thick and suffocating. I stood there, the book still open in front of me, the whispers starting to return, faint but persistent. I didn't know what it meant, what this final step was. But I knew one thing for certain. The house wasn't done with me yet. It had more to reveal, more to show me. I had unlocked a door, but there were more doors to open, more secrets to uncover. The ritual had been completed. Yes, but the story was far from over. The house was silent again, but I could feel the weight of its presence in every room. The walls seemed to be breathing, and I knew deep in my bones that the house was waiting. It was watching. It had chosen me, and no matter how much I wanted to leave, to escape, I couldn't. I had become a part of it. I slowly turned back to the book, my fingers brushing over the pages once more. The whispers were louder now, insistent, urging me to read. And so I did. The words seemed to call to me, drawing me deeper into the house's history, its mysteries, its curses. With each page I turned, I felt myself sinking further into its grip. And then I saw it, a name, Elena. Her name was written there, in the margins of the book, along with a date that I recognized. It was the date of her death, but it wasn't just her name that caught my eye. It was the final words on the page, written in a scrawl that looked almost frantic. "The house will never be free. Neither will you." I froze. The words seemed to burn into my mind, etching themselves into my consciousness. The truth, at last. This house was more than a place. It was a prison for souls, trapped by a dark ritual, doomed to roam for eternity. And now, it had claimed me too. The night passed in a blur, and by morning, the house felt heavier than ever. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was alive, aware of every breath I took, every step I made. The walls seemed to hum with a low, almost imperceptible vibration, like the beating of a heart hidden deep beneath the floorboards. It was unsettling. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to leave. I went to bed, exhausted from the day before, But the house refused to let me rest. I lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft creaks and groans of the house settling. But it wasn't the house I was listening to. No, there was something else. Whispers, faint at first, barely audible. But they grew louder with every passing second. The voices seemed to come from all around me, echoing off the walls, swirling through the air like a storm trapped in a bottle. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. It was urgent. The voices were speaking to me, calling to me, demanding that I listen. I pulled the covers tighter around me, my heart racing. I knew what this was. I had felt this before the pull. The draw of the house. It was as if the house itself was trying to get inside my head, to consume me, to trap me like it had done with Eleanor and the others before her. The whispers continued, growing louder still. I felt my grip on reality slipping. The air around me grew colder, the shadows in the corners of the room deepening, stretching toward me like tendrils of darkness reaching out from the depths of the earth. I sat up, gasping for breath. The room was alive with sound now, the whispers merging into a low, guttural hum that reverberated through my bones. The walls were vibrating, the floor beneath me trembling. I could feel it in my chest. The pulse of the house, the heartbeat of something ancient and powerful that had been waiting for me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. It was like I was frozen in place, caught in the grip of something far beyond my understanding. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, it stopped. The house fell silent again, as if nothing had happened. The whispers, the vibrations, the cold, they were gone. The room was still, the air thick with an oppressive silence. But I wasn't fooled. I could still feel it. The presence, lingering in the shadows, watching me. The house had shown me its true nature, and now it was waiting for me to make the next move, to play the game it had set in motion. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to know what the house wanted from me, what it had planned for me. I had unlocked the doors, but I had only just begun to see what lay behind them. The ritual had been completed. Yes, but there was more to the story. There had to be. I got out of bed, my legs unsteady as I made my way down the hallway. The house seemed to shift around me, the walls closing in as I moved. I could feel the weight of its gaze on me, as though the house itself was watching, waiting for me to make a decision. I reached the living room and saw the book sitting on the table, just as it had been before. It seemed to beckon me, its pages turning ever so slightly, as if inviting me to continue reading, to uncover more secrets, more truths. But what would I find this time? I didn't know, but I had to find out. I couldn't stop now. Not when the house had already claimed me. Not when it had shown me the depths of its power. I sat down at the table, my hands trembling as I opened the book once more. The pages seemed to turn by themselves, stopping at a page I hadn't seen before. The words on the page were different this time. They were clearer, more direct. The house will never be free unless you finish what was started. The words burned into my mind, as if the house itself was speaking to me through the pages. My heart raced as I read on, the lines becoming more and more frantic. You are the final piece. Without you, it will never end. You must complete the ritual or all will be lost. I felt a cold sweat break out on my skin. The room around me seemed to warp, the shadows growing darker, the air thick with an unnatural chill. The whispers returned, louder now, more insistent. The house was calling to me, urging me to finish what I had started, but I didn't know what that meant. What more could I do? I had already completed the ritual. I had freed the spirits. What else was there? I turned the page. There, written in jagged letters that seemed to crawl across the page, was the answer. The ritual must be repeated. One final time. Only then will the house be free. I stared at the words, my mind racing. Repeat the ritual. How could I do that? I had already done it once. I had completed the task. The spirits had been released. The house had been freed. But something deep inside me knew that it wasn't true. The house wasn't free. It couldn't be. It was still alive, still watching, still waiting. And I was the only one who could end it. The whispers returned, louder now, a chorus of voices urging me forward. I had to make a choice. I could leave. I could run away. But the house would follow me. It would never let me go. Or I could stay, finish the ritual, and free myself and the house from whatever dark force had bound us all together. The choice was mine. I closed the book, my hands shaking as I stood up. The house around me seemed to hold its breath, waiting for my decision. I knew what I had to do. I took a deep breath and walked toward the door, the whispers growing louder as I passed through the hallway. The house was alive, and it was waiting for me to finish what had been started. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I would finish it. I would end it. I stepped into the hallway, the weight of the house's presence pressing down on me. The air was thick with anticipation, each creak of the floorboards beneath my feet echoing like a drumbeat in the silence. The house had become a living thing, its pulse matching the rhythm of my own heart. The walls seemed to breathe, their ancient wood groaning under some unseen weight, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to make my next move. The whispers had quieted, but I could still feel them, lingering just beyond the edges of my awareness, like a melody you can't quite remember, but know will return at the slightest sound. I moved forward, my feet carrying me down the familiar hallway. But this time, it felt different. The house felt alive, more so than ever before. There was a tension in the air, a fraying thread that I knew, if pulled, would unravel everything. I reached the living room and stopped in front of the book. It was still open, its pages fluttering slightly, as if caught by a breeze that didn't exist. I hesitated for a moment, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on me. But there was no turning back now. The house had chosen me. It had revealed its secrets. And now I had to finish it. I reached for the book again, my fingers brushing against the cool, weathered pages. The words were waiting, as if they had always been there, ready for me to uncover them. I turned the pages slowly, each one heavier than the last, each word sinking deeper into my mind. The house wasn't just haunted by spirits. No, It was haunted by something older, something darker, a force that had tied itself to the very fabric of the house, bound by rituals and bloodlines, waiting for the right moment to break free. The ritual had been a binding, a promise made long ago, and I was the final piece, the key that would either release the house from its curse or doom it to remain trapped forever. But what would happen if I didn't complete it? Would I be trapped here, doomed to wander these halls for eternity? Just like Eleanor and the others, the thought sent a shiver down my spine. I turned to the final page. The words seemed to leap off the page, alive with the energy, as if they were reaching out to me. Complete the final binding. The text read, "You must give your blood to the house. Only then will the ritual be finished, and the house will be free." My breath caught in my throat. Give my blood. Was this the final step? Was I truly willing to go that far? The house had already taken so much from me. My peace, my safety, my sense of reality. Was I prepared to sacrifice more? I stood frozen for a moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. But deep down, I knew there was no choice. The house had claimed me, body and soul. If I didn't finish this, I would never be free. I would never escape its grip. The house had already pulled me into its web, and now it was asking for the final payment. I rolled up my sleeve and pressed my palm to my chest, feeling my heartbeat steady under my skin. It was now or never. I knew there would be no going back once I started this. My fingers shook as I found the sharp edge of a broken glass shard lying nearby, a remnant of the shattered window in the hallway. With a deep breath, I pressed it against the skin of my wrist. Pain shot through me as I drew a thin line of blood, the crimson liquid pooling on my skin. It wasn't much, just a small amount, but it felt like an eternity. I held my wrist over the open pages of the book, watching as a single drop of blood fell onto the paper. The room seemed to shift at that moment. The air grew thick again, the house groaning, as if waking from a long slumber. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, dancing on the walls, as though they had a life of their own. The house was responding to the blood, to the ritual. It was feeding on it, growing stronger, its grip tightening around me. I watched in horror as the blood soaked into the pages of the book, the words glowing faintly in response. The whispers began again, louder now, more frantic, as if the house itself was screaming, urging me to finish it. And then I saw something moving in the shadows behind me, something too large to ignore. A figure, tall and faint, emerging from the dark corners of the room. I turned slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. There, standing in the doorway, was Elena. Her form was clearer now, no longer the faint, shifting figure she had been before. She was solid, real, and her eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch in my throat. There was no fear in her gaze, no anger, just a quiet, knowing sadness. "It's time," she whispered, her voice soft but clear. "You've done it. You've completed the binding." I felt the house shift around me, the air thickening with power, with energy that pulsed through the walls and the floor beneath my feet. The book trembled in my hands, its pages turning on their own as if someone was guiding it. Eleanor stepped forward, her form shimmering like a reflection in water, and placed a hand on the book. The shadows around us seemed to respond, curling around her as though they were alive, pulling her into the very heart of the house. "The house will never be free until you are," she murmured, her voice growing fainter with each word. "But you will be the one to set us free. You are the last." I felt the last of my strength drain from me as the house reached out, its presence consuming me. But this time, it wasn't fear that filled me. It was acceptance. The house had shown me its power, had made me a part of it. And now, I had completed the ritual. There would be no more whispers, no more shadows. The house was free. And so was I. I closed the book, the last of the whispers fading into nothingness. The room grew still, the air lightened, as though the very weight of the house had been lifted. Eleanor's form faded from view, her eyes lingering on me, just long enough for me to feel the warmth of her gaze before she disappeared into the ether. Her part in the ritual complete, I stood alone, the book resting closed in my hands. The house was silent now, its oppressive grip finally released. I had finished it, and with it, I was free. The air in the house felt different now, as if something had shifted, but it was more than just the absence of the eerie presence that had once lingered around every corner. The house no longer felt as oppressive, but it didn't feel entirely free either. There was a strange stillness, a tension that hung in the air, like the calm before a storm. The house had let go of its grip, but not entirely. It felt as though it was waiting for something, holding its breath, waiting for me to make the next move. I had completed the ritual, or so I thought. I had performed the rites, freed the spirits, and yet the whispers hadn't stopped. They were quieter now, but still persistent, lingering just at the edge of my awareness. They were soft, like a murmur carried on the wind, but I couldn't ignore them. They were calling me, urging me to come back, to finish what I had started. The house had quieted, but the silence was thick, heavy, like something was lurking in the shadows. It was almost as if the house itself was awake, watching me, waiting for me to finish the final step. The door to the hidden room where I had found the book was closed now, but I could still feel it, the pull of that place, that room, calling me back. I couldn't ignore it. The ritual wasn't complete. The spirits were free, but the house still wasn't. I hadn't bound it. I hadn't finished the last part. The truth hit me like a wave, and for the first time since stepping into the house, I truly understood the ritual had been a binding, a tether, not just for the spirits, but for the house itself. And until that final bond was tied, the house would never be free. I walked toward the living room, my steps echoing in the otherwise still house. It was as though the very air was holding its breath, waiting for me to make my choice. The book lay on the table, waiting for me, as if it had always been there, ready to guide me through the final step. I opened it carefully, feeling the weight of the moment. The words on the page shimmered in the dim light, almost as if they were alive, waiting for me to read them. The room seemed to pulse with the energy, the shadows on the walls stretching as if reaching for me. And then I saw it. The final binding requires sacrifice. The words on the page read, "The house will remain trapped in its endless loop unless the final bond is made. The blood of the one who has bound the house must seal it. Only then will it be free." Sacrifice. The word hung in the air like a shadow, pressing against my chest, suffocating me. The realization came crashing down on me. I had to give something to truly end this. My blood, my essence, was the final key to releasing the house, to breaking the cycle. Only then would I be truly free. The whispers had returned, louder now, urging me on, telling me that I was the only one who could end it. The spirits had been freed, but I hadn't finished the ritual. I hadn't bound the house to the earth, to the land, to the very ground on which it stood. I stood there, frozen for a moment, the book open in front of me. The house was watching, waiting. The energy in the room was palpable, the walls trembling, the floor beneath my feet vibrating with anticipation. With trembling hands, I rolled up my sleeve and pressed the shard of glass against my wrist. The sharp edge bit into my skin, and a small stream of blood began to flow. The pain was sharp, but it wasn't the pain that made me hesitate. It was the fear that if I did this, if I made the sacrifice, I would be tied to this house forever, bound by the blood that would seal its fate. But there was no choice. The house had been waiting for this moment, and so had I. This was the final step. The ritual would be complete, and the house would finally be free. I held my wrist over the pages of the book, the blood dripping slowly, falling onto the parchment. As the blood touched the paper, the room seemed to come alive. The walls groaned, the floor creaked, and the air grew colder. The whispers were louder now, a chorus of voices chanting, urging me to finish. And then, just as the last drop of blood fell onto the page, everything stopped. The house fell silent. The air cleared. The weight that had been pressing down on me for so long lifted, leaving only a calm, peaceful stillness in its wake. The shadows receded, the whispers faded, and the house felt still. It was no longer alive with energy, no longer pulsing with the remnants of spirits trapped within its walls. It was done. I closed the book and stood there, staring at it, at the blood-stained pages that now sealed the fate of the house. The silence was absolute, and in that silence, I felt it freedom. The house was no longer a prison. It was no longer alive with the weight of the ritual. The spirits had been freed. The binding had been completed, and I had set it free. I turned to leave, walking slowly toward the door. The air light and easy now. The house was silent behind me, no longer pressing in, no longer holding me captive. The world outside was waiting, and I had finally earned my freedom. But as I reached for the door handle, I heard something, a faint whisper, barely audible. "Thank you," it said, soft and distant. I smiled softly to myself. The weight of the past finally lifted. The house was free, and so was I. The door creaked open, and I stepped outside, into the cool evening air. The world seemed brighter now, softer somehow, as though the weight of the house had faded from my shoulders, leaving me with a strange sense of calm. I looked up at the sky, the stars just beginning to appear, their soft light twinkling above me. offering a sense of peace that felt foreign after everything I had been through. I breathed in deeply, the scent of fresh earth and evening dew filling my lungs. It was different out here. Beyond the house's walls, the air was clear, the breeze gentle, and the world around me seemed to breathe in time with me. It felt like I was waking up from a long, dark dream, stepping into the daylight for the first time. But even as I took that first breath of freedom, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The house was behind me now, the weight of its presence fading with each step I took away from it. But there was a lingering sense that even though I had completed the ritual, something had been altered within me. I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The house had taken something from me, and in return, it had given me freedom. But at what cost? I walked further from the house, the gravel beneath my feet crunching softly in the still night. As I walked, I kept glancing back over my shoulder, half expecting to see a flicker of movement in the windows, a shadow crossing the doorframe. But nothing stirred. The house was still, its windows dark and lifeless. I didn't know how far I would go. I didn't know where the road would take me, but I knew I had to keep moving. The house had been a prison, but it had been more than that. It had been a part of me. Its grip had shaped my thoughts, my actions, my very being. And now, as I walked away, I was left to piece myself together again. The journey ahead was uncertain, but I was free to choose my path. For the first time, the future felt open to me, like a wide horizon stretching out in every direction. I couldn't stop thinking about the book, about the ritual, about the final sacrifice. I had given my blood, my essence, to finish what had been started long ago, but I still didn't fully understand what it meant. What was the true purpose of the ritual? Why had I been chosen? The house had demanded that I finish it. But what would have happened if I hadn't? Would I have been trapped there forever? Bound to the house in ways I could never escape. I didn't have the answers, and I wasn't sure I ever would. The house had been a part of me, but now it was just a memory, one that would fade with time. The whispers, the footsteps, the shadows, they were all behind me now. Their voices fading into the past. I kept walking, the road stretching out before me, winding through fields and forests, past homes and towns I had never seen before. The world was quiet, but I could feel it, a hum of life just beneath the surface. I was no longer bound by the house. I was free, but there was still a part of me that couldn't shake the feeling that I hadn't finished everything. That somehow there was more to the story, more that I needed to understand. The house had shared its secrets with me, and even though I had completed the ritual, I still felt like there was something left to uncover. I looked up at the stars above me, the soft light of the moon illuminating the path ahead. It was peaceful, the world at rest, but I knew that peace was fragile. There was always a shadow, just out of sight, a whisper just beyond the edge of my hearing. For now, though, I would walk in the quiet, embracing the stillness. The house was behind me, and the road ahead was mine to travel. As I continued down the path, I couldn't help but smile. I had set myself free. The house, the spirits, and the ritual, it was all behind me now. I had closed that chapter. The rest was up to me, and as I walked into the night, the weight of the past finally lifted. I knew that I had done what I had set out to do. I had freed the house, freed the spirits, and most importantly, freed myself. I walked for hours, the world around me unfolding into the stillness of the night. The stars above glowed with an unearthly light, 1,000 pinpricks of brightness in the vast, velvet sky. The moon hung like a guardian, casting its cold, silvery light over the land. The air was fresh, crisp with the scent of pine and earth, and the soft breeze seemed to cleanse the remnants of the house from my skin, from my soul. With each step, I felt myself further removed from the dark weight of the house. The shadows that had once clung to me, those dark tendrils of fear, of dread, seemed to dissipate with the distance. Yet, there was an undercurrent of something still there, something faint but present. Like the hum of a distant memory I couldn't quite place. I glanced over my shoulder once more. Even though I knew I wouldn't see the house, it had already faded into the night, swallowed by the vast expanse of the forest behind me. I didn't know what awaited me on this road, where it would lead, but the feeling of finality, the sense that I had crossed a threshold, lingered like the remnants of a dream. The house had been my prison, yes, but it had also been the keeper of a story, my story, and now it was over. The ritual had been completed, the spirits freed, and the house had released its grip on me. I was no longer a prisoner of the past, but in some ways, I wondered if I could ever fully leave it behind. The weight of the memories, the rituals, the whispers, they still clung to me like a shadow, faint but persistent. As I walked further down the road, I couldn't help but feel like I was leaving a part of myself behind, buried within the walls of that cursed place. The house had demanded a price, and though I had paid it, a part of me remained there, bound to the spirits and the rituals that had shaped me. I shook my head. No, I had to keep moving forward. The road ahead was empty, the world around me quiet and vast. The only sounds were the rustling of leaves in the wind, the crunch of gravel beneath my boots, and the distant call of an owl. It felt like the entire world had gone to sleep, and I was the only one awake, walking through the night, away from the place that had shaped my life in ways I couldn't even begin to understand. I didn't know where this road would take me. I didn't know what would come next, but for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't afraid. The house, with its whispers and shadows, was behind me now. The ritual had bound it, and with my sacrifice, I had set myself free. But I couldn't help but wonder, with every step I took, if the house would ever truly be behind me. Would it haunt me forever? The whisper in shadows, the cold grip of the spirits, it all seemed to follow me. Even in this new silence, I could feel it, faint but persistent. The house had been a part of me. How could I ever truly escape it? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stop thinking about it. The air felt lighter now, and though there was a part of me that felt the weight of the past, I couldn't let it hold me down. The world around me was quiet, and it felt like the weight of years had fallen off my shoulders. The house had no power over me now. I had completed the ritual. The spirits had been set free. I paused. Standing in the middle of the road, the forest stretched out before me, dark and mysterious, but peaceful in its stillness. There was no sign of danger. There was no presence lurking in the shadows. I had come this far, and now it was time to step into the unknown. I smiled to myself. The first genuine smile in what felt like forever. I had done it. I had faced the house, faced the spirits, and faced my own fears. And now, I was free. I started walking again, my pace steady, my heart lighter than it had ever been. The path ahead was uncertain, but it didn't matter. I had taken the first step toward my own freedom, away from the house, away from the past, and into a future I could choose for myself. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. The house, the rituals, the ghosts, they were all behind me, and the road ahead was mine to walk. With each step, I left more of the darkness behind. The house had been a prison, but now it was just a memory, one that would fade with time. It was no longer my burden to carry. The air around me seemed to lighten, the road ahead opening up, stretching far into the distance. I could see the outline of a town in the far distance, lights twinkling on the horizon, and I knew that no matter what came next, I had freed myself. I glanced up at the sky once more, the stars shimmering above me, and I felt a sense of peace. The house was no longer part of me. The spirits were free. The ritual was complete, and I was free. The road stretched out ahead of me, a winding path that seemed to disappear into the horizon. I didn't know where it would lead, but I was no longer worried. The weight of the house, of the rituals, of the spirits, it was all behind me now. For the first time in a long while, I felt the air around me fresh and clear, no longer suffocating with fear or uncertainty, but filled with the quiet hum of peace. I had completed the ritual. I had bound the house, freed the spirits, and given my blood to end the cycle that had held us all captive for so long. But even with that weight lifted, I couldn't ignore the subtle feeling that there was more to be understood, more to be uncovered. The shadow still lingered at the edges of my consciousness. The house wasn't just a structure. It had been a living thing, with a history deeper and darker than I could comprehend. And now, I carried that history with me, embedded into my very being. I could feel it, like a thread tied to my soul, pulling me towards something unknown. I stopped for a moment and closed my eyes, listening to the stillness around me. The night was quiet, but there was a tension in the air, a hum just beneath the surface. The road ahead felt endless, stretching forward into the unknown, but I didn't feel afraid anymore. The road wasn't just a physical path. It was a journey, one that had started long before I even knew it. The house, the spirits, the ritual, it had all been a part of my story. And now, that chapter had come to an end. But what came next? I took a deep breath, shaking off the last remnants of uncertainty. The air was crisp, the night cool against my skin. I began walking again, my steps slow but steady. The past was behind me, but I knew that part of it would always linger. The house had shaped me in ways I couldn't entirely explain. The spirits, the whispers, they had been my companions, my tormentors, my teachers. The road continued before me, the path winding through the trees. In the distance, I could see the faint glow of a town. It wasn't far. A small settlement, perhaps, with people and houses and life, everything that had been waiting for me outside the house, outside of the darkness. As I walked, I realized something. The house had held me captive. Yes, but it had also shown me something. It had revealed the truth about my own strength, about my ability to face the darkness and walk away from it. And now, I was free. Free from the house. Free from its grip. Free from the past that had kept me tethered for so long. But there was something else, too. Something I couldn't shake, no matter how much I tried to push it away. A question always lurking at the edge of my mind. Why me? Why had the house chosen me? Why had I been the one to complete the ritual? I wasn't special. Wasn't chosen by fate. I was just another person. Another soul caught in the web of the house's dark history. And yet, it had called to me. It had drawn me in. And in the end, it had been me who had freed it. I couldn't answer that question. Maybe I never would. But as I walked further down the road, the uncertainty faded, replaced by a quiet acceptance. I had done what I needed to do. The house had been freed. The spirits had been released. And now, I was free too. The road ahead was open. And for the first time, I didn't feel weighed down by the past. I could feel the world around me, its soft, steady rhythm, its hum of life, beckoning me forward. I reached the town, its lights twinkling in the distance, and I realized that this was it. This was the beginning of something new. The house had taught me that nothing lasts forever. Even the darkest places could be freed. Even the heaviest burdens could be lifted. But only if you had the strength to face them, to walk away when it was time. I smiled softly to myself, feeling the weight of the past finally lift. The night was quiet now, peaceful, and as I stepped into the town, I knew that I was ready. The road had brought me here, but it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning, and for the first time in a long while, I was at peace with that. The town before me was everything I had imagined it to be and more quaint, peaceful, and bathed in a golden glow from the streetlights that lined the quiet streets. The houses were small, cozy, each one unique with its own charm. I could hear faint laughter drifting out from a nearby cafe, the soft clinking of silverware against china, and the hum of conversation between friends and families enjoying their evening together. The entire town was alive in a way that felt so foreign to me after the oppressive silence of the house I had left behind. It felt like a different world. A world where the air wasn't thick with secrets and dread, where the dark corners didn't hold the weight of centuries of unfinished rituals. I took a deep breath, letting the fresh air fill my lungs. It was crisp, cool, alive, the scent of earth, of pine, of something so completely natural and untarnished by the darkness I had just escaped. The warmth of the town surrounded me like a soft embrace, and for a moment, I stood still, just taking it all in. The world had shifted, and so had I. I had walked out of that house, out of its dark influence, away from its eerie grip. But I couldn't deny that something had changed inside me. The ritual had completed. The spirits had been freed. And the house itself had released me. I should have felt only relief. Yet, in the back of my mind, there was a lingering whisper, a reminder of everything I had experienced and left behind. I kept walking, my footsteps muffled by the soft ground beneath my feet. The town stretched out before me, the paths winding around small shops and cozy homes. There was a park, just up ahead, with trees swaying gently in the wind. The soft rustling of their leaves made me stop for a moment. Standing just outside the gate and looking at the peaceful scene, I could see children playing on swings, their laughter rising in the air like music. A couple walked by, holding hands, their fingers intertwined, completely unaware of the darkness I had just escaped. The peace was almost unbearable, a sharp contrast to the world I had just left behind. My thoughts were clouded with memories of the house, the shadows, the whispers. The presence of Elena and I couldn't help but wonder, would I ever truly be free of it? I walked into the park, letting the sounds of the children's laughter wash over me. The wind blew through the trees, and for a moment I let myself feel the comfort of the world around me. The air was fresh, the sky wide and clear, but there was still something in me, a lingering sense that I couldn't shake. The house wasn't just behind me, it was within me, too. The rituals, the blood, the sacrifice, it had left its mark. And though I had completed the ritual and freed the spirits, I still felt its pull. Was I truly free? Or was I simply running from the past? I sat down on a bench beneath one of the larger trees, the leaves rustling gently overhead. The town around me felt so calm, so alive, but my mind kept drifting back to the house. I tried to push the thoughts away, but they kept returning like echoes in the back of my mind. The house had been alive. The ritual had bound me to it in ways I couldn't fully understand. And no matter how far I walked, a part of me would always be tethered to it. I closed my eyes for a moment, breathing in the peace of the park, the life around me. The tension that had coiled so tightly in my chest finally began to loosen. Maybe it wasn't about escaping the house entirely. Maybe it was about finding a way to move forward, to accept what had happened, to understand that it had shaped me but it didn't define me. The ritual, the spirits, the house, they were in the past, and I had to let them go. The road ahead was mine to choose. It always had been. When I opened my eyes, the town was just as peaceful as before, and I felt the weight of the past slowly lift from my shoulders. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't hiding. I was walking forward into the unknown, into a future that I could create for myself. The house was a chapter in my life, one that had come to an end. And now, it was time for the next chapter to begin. I stood up from the bench and walked further into the park. My pace slower now, more deliberate. The road stretched out ahead of me, and though I didn't know exactly where it would lead, I felt a sense of calm, of acceptance. I had faced the darkness. I had faced the house. And now, I was free. There was a small diner up ahead. The glow of its neon sign flickered in the distance, inviting me in. I walked toward it, my steps growing steadier with each passing moment. The hum of the town, the quiet rhythm of life, felt right. This was where I needed to be. I reached the diner and pushed the door open. The warm light inside enveloped me, and the smell of fresh coffee and food filled the air. People were chatting in low voices, the clink of silverware against plates blending with the soft murmur of conversation. I found a seat by the window and ordered a cup of coffee, letting the comfort of the place sink in. As I sat there, I realized something. The house, the spirits, the ritual, it had all been part of my journey. But it wasn't my destination. The road ahead, the choices I made now, that was my journey. The house had no power over me anymore. I was free to live my life, to make my own decisions. The road ahead was open, and it was mine to walk. I looked out the window, watching the world go by, the town alive with its quiet, unhurried rhythm. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. The past had shaped me, but it no longer controlled me. The house, the spirits, the blood, it was all behind me. And as the night stretched on, I knew that this was just the beginning of something new, something entirely mine. The town before me was a world away from the darkness of the house I had left behind. The streets were lined with quiet homes, their windows glowing warmly in the night. There was a peacefulness in the air that seemed almost foreign to me after everything I had endured. The world outside was full of life, gentle and unhurried. I could hear the soft laughter of families enjoying their evening, the clinking of silverware, and the low hum of conversation. The world continued on without the weight of dark memories, as if nothing had ever disturbed its peaceful rhythm. As I stood there, just outside the diner, the door jingling softly as it closed behind me, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of displacement. I had left the house behind, walked away from the ritual, the spirits, and the centuries-old secrets. I had freed myself, or so I thought. But the truth lingered, tucked in the back of my mind. The house, despite the ritual, despite the blood spilled, still called to me. Not in a way that was immediate or threatening, but in the most insidious way possible, like a whisper carried by the wind, a memory that refused to fade completely. The ritual had been completed, the spirits freed, and yet there was a pull, a dark curiosity about the house that gnawed at me. I took a deep breath and began walking down the sidewalk. My steps slow, deliberate. The peaceful rhythm of the town surrounded me, but inside, I felt a stirring, a longing to understand, to seek the answers that the house had left behind. The town was calm, the sky above clear, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that my journey wasn't finished. The road ahead felt wide and uncertain, but at the same time, it felt like the only path I could take. I passed by small shops with glowing windows, hearing the laughter of the townspeople drifting in the air, as if their world had never been touched by the darkness I had faced. I envied them, in a way. They were free from the weight of history, of rituals, of the unseen forces that had shaped me. They lived simple, quiet lives, while I would always carry the weight of the house with me. It had shaped my past, my decisions, my very soul, the spirits. The blood, the house would always be with me, in some form. I paused at a small park, the quiet rustle of trees filling the night. There were a few people sitting on benches, lost in their own conversations. oblivious to the world of darkness I had just escaped. I felt out of place here, like an outsider trying to fit into a world that didn't know the weight I carried. The house, the spirits, it was all too much. Yet, I had survived it. I had faced the darkness, faced the past, and walked away from it. The question remained. Though, what now? The ritual was complete. The spirits were freed. I was free. But what did that freedom mean? Was it a release from the house? Or was it just another part of the same cycle one that would continue to pull me back? No matter how far I walked, could I truly leave it all behind? Or had the house simply passed the burden on to me in a different form? I took a seat on one of the benches in the park, my mind racing. The quiet of the night seemed to press in around me, and the faint murmur of conversation from nearby tables blended with the rustling of leaves in the trees. The world was peaceful, serene, but I wasn't. Not yet. There was something unsettled in me, something unfinished. The house had been freed, but I wasn't sure I had freed myself from its grasp. The night air felt cool against my skin, the breeze soft and comforting. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to quiet the noise in my mind. But the whispers came, faint at first, just barely audible. They didn't come from the house, no, they came from within. From me. The spirits had been freed, but I still felt their presence, their voices lingering in the corners of my thoughts. I opened my eyes and looked up at the stars. They twinkled in the dark sky, distant and cold, yet somehow comforting in their vastness. The town around me felt alive with the hum of life, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that I was trapped in the space between worlds, the space between the past and the future, between the house and the road ahead. I stood up, my legs stiff from sitting, and began walking again. This time, I felt the road ahead more clearly. The weight of the past, though still present, felt lighter somehow. The town was peaceful, and perhaps it was time for me to embrace that peace. The house was behind me, its hold slipping from my soul with every step I took. But there would always be a part of me that remembered. The house, its rituals, the spirits, it had shaped me. And though the road ahead was mine to walk, the journey would always be a reflection of what I had endured. Perhaps that was what freedom truly was, not the absence of the past, but the ability to live with it, to carry it, and to move forward despite it. The road ahead felt open, the darkness of the past fading behind me. I could see the glow of the town in the distance, the warm light from the diner spilling out onto the sidewalk. I could hear the laughter, the soft hum of life continuing, undisturbed, and as I walked, I felt a sense of calm begin to settle in my chest. I had walked away from the house, I had freed the spirits, and now I had the power to walk into the future. The town was waiting, and for the first time, I felt ready to be a part of it. The town was full of life, a place where time moved slowly, unaffected by the dark past that I carried with me. As I walked through the quiet streets, the evening air wrapped around me like a comforting blanket. The sounds of the town, the rustling of leaves, the distant hum of a car engine, the soft voices of people chatting outside felt surreal, almost like a dream. It was a world so far removed from the dark, oppressive presence of the house, and yet It still seemed to echo in my mind. I had done it. I had completed the ritual, freed the spirits, and walked away from the house. The house, with its shadows, whispers, and bound spirits, had once held me captive, its dark influence pressing against me, suffocating me. But now, as I walked through the town, the weight of it was lifting, slowly but surely. The world around me was calm. The stars above, clear and bright, twinkled in the night sky. The houses were warm, their windows glowing with light, people laughing inside. It was all so peaceful, so still. The kind of peace I had longed for during my time in the house. And yet, there was a lingering sense of unease deep within me. Something I couldn't shake. The house was behind me. Yes, but I couldn't forget it. I couldn't forget the spirits, the ritual, the blood. It had left its mark on me, shaped me in ways I couldn't fully understand. The pull of it, the whispers that seemed to follow me, weren't gone entirely. But the road ahead was mine to walk. It was time to leave the past behind and face whatever came next. I reached the edge of the town, standing at the crossroads where the paved road met the dirt path. The quiet of the night enveloped me, and for a brief moment I allowed myself to just stand there, taking it all in. The weight of the past felt distant now, fading with every step I had taken away from the house. I had faced the darkness. I had broken the curse, freed the spirits, and walked away from it all. But there was a lingering sense of finality, a feeling that this was just the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The house would always be a part of me. Its memories, its spirits, would live within me in some way, but it would no longer control me. I smiled to myself, feeling the cool night air fill my lungs. The peace that had eluded me for so long was finally settling in. I had come through it, and now I was free. The road ahead was open, stretching out before me. It was a road I could walk, a future I could choose. The town behind me, the memories of the house, they were in the past, and with each step I took, they grew further away. I glanced one last time at the road that led back to the house, the road that had shaped my past. It was gone now, fading into the night, swallowed by the distance. I knew that I had completed what was necessary, that the house was no longer a threat. It was free. The spirits were free. I looked ahead once more, the stars shining brightly above me. The town, the people, the world, it was waiting for me. The road was mine to walk, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, and began walking forward, my steps sure, my heart light. The journey ahead was unknown, but it was mine to choose. And as I walked into the night, the memories of the house faded behind me. They were part of the past, a past I would never forget, but one that would no longer define me. The road ahead was full of possibilities, of new beginnings, and I was ready for whatever came next. As I continued down the road, the gentle rhythm of my footsteps seemed to sync with the peaceful hum of the night around me. The distant sound of the town's life, so full of quiet joy, faded as the night deepened. The moon hung high above, casting a soft silver glow over the landscape. making everything seem still and untouched by time. The trees whispered in the cool breeze, their branches swaying gently, like they were sharing secrets with the wind. I didn't feel the weight of the past anymore. The house, with its dark corners and shadowy presence, seemed to slip further away with every step I took. The ritual, the spirits, and even the blood I had given it was all behind me now. In its place was something new, freedom. I had faced the darkness, and I had come out the other side, stronger and more certain of who I was. The road ahead was peaceful, and the night, with its quiet solitude, wrapped around me like a warm blanket. The stars twinkled above, endless and constant, as if they were watching over me, guiding me through the quiet of the night. The world felt so much bigger now, open and full of possibilities. As I walked, I allowed the stillness to settle into my bones, letting go of the last remnants of the house that lingered in my mind. The whispers, the shadows, they were fading, disappearing into the vast night. The world ahead was mine to explore, mine to shape, and with every step, I felt lighter, more at peace, more connected to the world I had once feared. Sleep well, for the road ahead is waiting.